From the book, That Psyche of the Shot. By Heinz Reinkemeyer and Gabby Bullman. Introduction. Hen and egg? Is the successful shot a technical or primarily a psychological achievement? When the professional misses the 80-centimeter putt, has his momentum left him or have his nerves played tricks on him? How did you experience the decisive action in your last important competition, a matter of nerves or a question of technique?
Plays his cards well, and I think with a 10.2.
This is precisely the crucial question in competition-oriented sports psychology. Is the action determined by the motor execution or by the nervous event? Of course, the humanist immediately pushes for a relativization here. Body and mind are one unit, both are involved and equally important for failure or success. But wait, the Titans clearly see themselves in the grip of their nerves. Golf legend Ben Hogan said in 1970, "Golf is 20% technical and 80% mental." A statement that is still shared by top athletes in all disciplines today and can be read again and again in this or a similar way. The sum of such quotes from the heroes of sports has almost taken on the character of a law of nature.
Can't get over it.
If the first grader oversteps in his jump in the sand pit, he will already classify this as a psychological failure. Any criticism of his run-up by the teacher is suspected of petty obsession with detail. As coaches, we have accompanied many a competition, especially for sport shooters, including some successful Olympic finals. Here, as at all other tournaments, the athletes describe defeats and triumphs mainly from the perspective of their psychological experience. I was just too nervous. I was suddenly quite sure. I thought, if now, ... These are typical statements that coaches and trainers hear after the final and which, no wonder, dominate the headlines of the sports media the next day. Our view of things is clearly different. As expert coaches and battle-hardened psychologists, we see the technical and the psychological levels as quasi-synchronous and thus equally valuable. Therefore, we believe we can judge to what extent technique and psyche determine the events. The technical-tactical level clearly appears dominant to us. If mistakes happen, then, even in an Olympic final, the movement control is clearly responsible. The gold medal goes to the one who is technically better. Our experience would simply reverse Ben Hogan's thesis, i.e. set the proportions of technique and psyche at a ratio of 80 to 20, nerves are important, but momentum directs the shot. Aiming and release set the shot. This view is rather unconventional for the authors of a book on competition psychology. But on the other hand, it corresponds to our findings from countless practical assignments, which we, as a tried and tested pair, naturally discuss at length every time. Even more than the internal discussion, however, we are strengthened by practice. Since we have been focusing on the technical-tactical aspects of our athletes and treating the psyche more as a parallel factor, the shooters we coach have enjoyed a much higher level of marksmanship, even when it comes to the really big tasks. We are writing this book because we are sure that the psyche factor has become a paper tiger in many places. Active players, coaches and support staff sometimes revolve almost hysterically around a golden calf that is often overestimated in its importance. A little more sense of proportion would bring relief and, above all, better results. Some people torture themselves with positive thinking and mental replay, while careful training of the technical elements would bring them far more. In the initial consultation, athletes describe their problems in the fight to us mainly as mental agitation, tension, lack of concentration. In addition, there are other mental and physical symptoms, all of which disturb, slow down or even block the flow of things. What works in training goes into a tailspin in the match due to thoughts and feelings. Professionals see themselves in psychological entanglements. which are altogether responsible for the majority of all disappointments in championships and qualifications. On the last shot, my concentration was suddenly gone, which then also went completely wrong and cost me the victory. I definitely have to learn to concentrate better. Unlike other sports psychologists, we consider self-descriptions like these to be at best one aspect of the problem. Mostly they are subjective, influenced by other people's and prejudices, but above all they are one-sidedly psycho-oriented.
Bit of a
That is, related to supposedly psychological or mental factors. The reality of competition, however, is different. The most important instrument for assessing a problem is the observation of the competition. Only those who see the athlete in action can recognize conditional, technical, tactical, and psychological components in context. For example, a mistake in the last action is almost always attributed to concentration or excitement by the athlete and his coach. But much more often the following are involved: physique, no more strength; technique, simply not acting properly; or tactics, acted too hastily, are the main culprits. In such cases, those who focus on mental components will be fishing in the dark in the long run. One of our classic comments after a systematic observation of a competition is, "You are not unfocused, you just shoot the last one badly." You'd better take care of a stable execution that you can call up in moments of crisis. Before we talk about your psyche, I want to see a decent shot first. The athlete hears this with horror at first, because such messages attack his long-held line of defense. At the same time, this statement relieves him because he is being pulled out of the psychological quagmire by a competent party. I'm not a nervous wreck, I'm just training wrong. I can get a grip on it with normal means and methods. Strange psycho who interferes with my technique. Maybe there's something to it. If you look for psychological causes where conditional, technical or tactical deficiencies prevail, you get into a dilemma. He confirms his potential in practice and in lower-level tournaments, but regularly falls behind in the test. Mainly because he does not remedy the underlying deficiencies. Then later, because with recurring disappointments, the negative expectation is solidified. Practice. Technical mistakes in competition are often experienced as tension or cramping. Unlike in training, the athlete perceives his muscles as tighter and strained. The golf swing no longer whips and loses distance and precision. The shot does not release because the trigger finger remains rigid. This symptomatology can be attacked by relaxation exercises or visualization on the purely mental flank. In doing so, the athlete learns to consciously loosen up and imagine staying calm in the match. This may work in rare cases, but most of the time low tensions will creep back in under pressure and cause the usual faulty reactions. The vicious circle of botched actions, self-doubt, and a botched performance takes its course again. The technical-tactical approach is to create pressure in training so that the tensions already set in here. Then the athlete learns to use his firmer muscles under competition conditions, so to speak. At first he will have difficulties, but soon he will be able to develop the usual abilities again. In the next competition, he will hardly notice the tension as a normal condition and will be able to act undisturbed. Some experienced coaches are quite harsh in their training. He or she sets high expectations, reprimands technical mistakes immediately, bullies where possible and ends the session with precise demands. This method, sensibly dosed, brings little harmony, but often good competitors. Tough demands and exact criticism create a tension profile in training that comes close to the conditions in competition. Because in the match everything is demanded. The smallest mistakes are punished severely, unaccustomed stress aggravates the situation. And in the end, you usually get a slap on the wrist when you look at the results list.
What a comeback that has been!
Those who deliberately provoke similar stresses in training experience the match more calmly, because they are already on a first-name basis with frustration, anger and tension during the practice tasks. If you want to have strong nerves in the match, you should let yourself be tortured during the exercise or torture yourself. So consciously incorporate handicaps of all kinds. This doesn't sound like a gentle intervention in sports psychology, but in the reality of top-class sport, it is exactly what will bring you success.